All right. Good morning, everyone. Great photo up there. Love that. So I'm Maria. For those of you who don't know me, I attend church here at Park Rose, and I'm a member of the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. We're a global alliances of churches, nonprofits, grassroots organizations who are committed to campaigning for a just and lasting peace in the Philippines. Today actually marks 3 months since the Negros 19 massacre. So on April 19th, 19 people were killed by the armed forces of the Philippines on the island of Negros. And two of those people who were killed were Filipino Americans, Lyle Frijoles and Kai Soram. I didn't know Kai, but I did know Lyle. He lived in Northern California, and he was a really instrumental part of leading iChirp US. And so we got to work on a lot of different projects together over the years. Actually, a year ago, we were working on planning out this conference that iChirp US had. And I had no idea that that would be the last thing that we would get to work on together. And yeah, it's been just a very, very difficult time the past few months. I remember, yeah, I'll never forget how it felt to get the message that he was one of the ones killed in the massacre. I had heard about what had happened, but it didn't really hit home until I found out that someone that I knew and had worked with was among those who were killed. Um, and yeah, there's been so many different emotions. I know we had a prayer here, and some of you came to the the vigil that we held for the Negros 19. And there's been a lot of grief and loss. There's also been a lot of pride that someone who is so someone would be so dedicated to the movement to go back home and serve the people no matter the cost. um, and there's been a lot of anger that this would happen, and that the mainstream media has really tried to portray Lyle and Kai as terrorists or as somehow doing something nefarious when they were in the Philippines. And so that's brought up a lot of anger for me. Um, and I've even felt at times like pessimistic about our work. Like, is this really doing anything? Are we uh, you know, could will something like this happen to me or other people that I care about? And so just a lot of really challenging emotions. And I think, there can be a lot of hopelessness when we look around at our situation in this country as well, when we're seeing things like the murders that happened this week at the hands of ICE, when we're looking at cuts to social services like SNAP or veteran services. Um, we saw with the State Department this week doubling down on what it deems as terrorism, and these things can really start to make us feel hopeless. I can't remember the exact line in the song, but the first song that we sang that talked about God drawing us out of our despair. I really liked that and resonated with that in my own journey. Uh, and something I was thinking about this week is, like, as a church, we've been going through this series of poisonous platitudes. And something that I was thinking about is, like, one of the things I grew up hearing all the time is, like, everything happens for a reason. I'm sure we've all heard that at different times. And oftentimes it's a way of, like, dismissing what you're dealing with. Like, everything happens for a reason. It's in God's hands. Um, but I started thinking about how, like, these problems that I mentioned, whether here or in the Philippines, like, they are happening for reasons. They're happening because of the systemic sin that that the quote earlier talked about. And I think the massacre of the Negros 19 is a really good reminder and example of this kind of systemic inequality, because the Negros, the island of Negros, is known as the sugar bowl of the Philippines. So it produces vast quantities of sugar for export. But Negros Island is also known as the massacre capital of the Philippines, because there's so much exploitation and so many um, people who are working for like $5 a day doing this backbreaking labor, and then they start to come together to fight against these exploitative conditions. And then we see things like the Negros 19 massacre, which, you know, there have been other massacres before and other forms of fascist violence against the people. Um, but something that is really powerful is the way that people keep coming together. Even after the massacre, people in Negros have continued to organize and come together. And people often ask me, like, why, as a non-Filipino, do you take up the cause of Philippine solidarity? And I think for me, it really comes down to the fact that it's been through the movement in the Philippines that I've been able to understand that when we take action together, we can have real victories. And I first learned about the movement in 2020 when I was grappling with, you know, the pandemic, the George Floyd uprisings. I was dealing with my own unemployment and housing insecurity. And I just found so much strength in learning about this centuries long movement that's seeking to address really like the most fundamental problems of society, which we see shared across borders. And so, um, yeah, and I've really seen how the movement in the Philippines has launched this international movement of people. I think that's evidenced by the work of iChirp, which was started by Filipino organizations in order to develop solidarity support for the struggle. And I wanted to read this quote again, and just draw a few things out. We cannot respond proactively to sin and evil without a good grasp of power and how it works in individuals and social institutions. Systemic sin is pervasive, like the air we breathe and the ocean we swim in. Silence can be a form of social sin when truth needs to be spoken. And this quote comes from Dr. Eliezer Fernandez, who has been a really big part of developing the theology of struggle in the Philippines. And some of you may be familiar with like liberation theology, and that the theology of struggle really is kind of an iteration of liberation theology specifically applied to the Philippines. And it really highlights the fact that it's in the struggle itself that we can see God. It's in resistance itself that we can encounter God in each other, and to really root ourselves in the present moment and the ways that we can take action now. And I heard someone recently say, like, the next best thing to winning victory in the struggle is to be in the struggle together. And I really resonated with that, because the struggle looks like so many different things. You know, it is the political work and rallies and integrations and all the things, but it's also dancing and joy and singing. And so these are all part of what it means to take up the struggle for freedom. And I think thinking on the idea that silence can be a form of social sin when truth needs to be spoken. Last month, I was at the Kalikasan Summit in Los Angeles, which many of you supported to help get me and others there, which I'm so thankful for. And it was an amazing gathering of over 1,000 Filipinos and Solidarity allies in Los Angeles coming together to talk about shared fights for freedom from poverty, exploitation, detention, and an end to war and occupation. And it was so inspiring and life giving to hear people from all over the country talking about the fights that they're taking up in their workplaces or in their communities, getting reinstated after being fired for advocating for their rights, fighting for higher wages. We also heard from Kai's sibling, so Kai, one of the ones who was murdered in the Negros 19, and her sibling is just, it was incredible hearing from them because, you know, they're going through this just like unimaginable loss, but are still such a strong leader in the campaign that has emerged, calling to defend Negros. And something that Kai's sibling and then others at the conference really emphasized is that yes, you know, we're mourning and we're grieving our friends who have died, but what the best way to keep their legacy alive and to honor their legacy is to continue in the work that they were doing. And so that's something I've really taken to heart. And for me, I'll just share a little bit of what that looks like, which some of you know because you've been part of it too. But my work looks like working with iChirp here locally, iChirp Oregon, and the Care for Caregivers campaign and the Defend Migrants campaign. And so in terms of iChirp, in the wake of the Negros 19 massacre, we helped organize a vigil and a day of mourning and rage, really going to particularly Senator Merkley and advocating for an independent investigation into the massacre and an inquiry into the use of U.S. security assistance. And that's part of our Stop the Killings campaign project. And one thing I want to emphasize today is that, you know, Philippine solidarity isn't just across borders or, you know, taking up global campaigns, but it's really taking up solidarity with our neighbors as well. Just a couple miles from here, there's a care home where there's many Filipino caregivers who work there, and members of the Care for Caregivers campaign and the Samahan Filipino Caregivers Association are organizing the workers there to assert their rights in the workplace and advocate for better conditions. And as I've learned more about what's going on there, I mean, it's pretty intense. Many of the workers haven't received raises in almost 3 years. There's a lack of cleaning supplies, so people have had to use like shampoo to clean the floors. And just a couple of examples of ways that it's a really unsafe environment, and there's chronic understaffing, which is unsafe for both the workers and the residents. And so the workers have come together to create a petition for to present to the employer, and 96% of the workers there signed on to it. And I'll share more about it later, but there's an ask for community members to sign on to a community petition or a community letter letting the employer know other people are seeing what's going on and we're concerned about it, and we want you to take action. So I'll share more on that. Another way that Philippine solidarity can look like solidarity with our neighbors is supporting migrant Filipino youth, who a lot of them here that we know are experiencing mental health challenges like depression and anxiety from the economic hardships they face, from violence, racism, isolation. And so, actually, at David Douglas High School last year, students came together to start a Filipino club that uplifts their culture and heritage and builds community that's healthy and really seeks to address some of this isolation and mental health challenges. Um, and then another point that I want to make is like the movement for Philippine solidarity is really broad and extends solidarity to other struggles. And so that's why we have what's called the Defend Migrants Alliance, which was convened by a Filipino alliance called Tanggol Migrante and the International Migrants Alliance that came together almost a year ago exactly. And that's really a space where any migrants of any nationalities can come together and wage campaigns and advocate for themselves or their loved ones. And we know, like, regardless of what happens in the news cycle, the detentions and deportations have not stopped. And I think a really clear example of how this solidarity extends from the Filipino movement to other people is that there's been an increase in detentions among Lao migrants. So organization called Anik Bayan has it's a Filipino-led organization, but it's really taken the lead in campaigning for the release of Lao migrants, and one of them was released recently, which is incredibly exciting. And we're continuing to work on advocating for the release of others. And these different campaigns that I've talked about through iChirp, through the Defend Migrants Alliance, these really are our way of speaking the truth and refusing to be silenced in the face of this systemic sin. And these campaigns give concrete form to our desire to say, hey, we see what you're going through, and we don't want each other to suffer invisibly. We're going to uplift the conditions that you're working in and the demands that you have, and carry each other's burdens. So my invitation to all of you is to join in on this work with me. In order to address the fascism and economic crises and gutting of social services that we all are experiencing to some degree or another, we need to be able to stand in solidarity with one another. We need to take up long-term campaigns that address the roots of these problems and not only short-term symptoms or solutions. And we need to take up genuine solidarity rooted in love and relationship, not just charity or giving to others, but really being in community. And we need to take up this work across borders for a future where people don't have to leave their homelands in the first place because of a lack of jobs or because of a lack of livelihood, and for a future where people can return to their homelands without fear of being killed or facing other forms of repression. And we know in the Philippine Solidarity Movement that the Filipino people deserve solidarity, because we know that people shouldn't be getting massacred, people's land shouldn't be getting stolen, and people should be making a living wage in safe working conditions, and so we want to do everything that we can to make that a reality. Okay, it's a little harder. So I really urge everyone here to think about how you can contribute and participate in the struggle. Sorry, losing my voice. So a couple of specific ways that can look that I would like to share with you all is specifically with the Care for Caregivers campaign. We have the community letter. It'll be in the Eastminster Hall during coffee hour. So if you're able to sign that and show the caregivers that we stand with them, that we understand what they're going through, that would be wonderful. And then another part of the Care for Caregivers campaign is holding health clinics and so we're always looking for volunteers for those, and specifically we're also looking for people who can provide things like massage therapy and acupuncture for our caregivers. So they pour out so much for other people, so we really want to be able to give back to them. And then one other thing, the Restorative Justice Committee is planning a film screening and fundraiser with the theme of Philippines-Palestine solidarity, which will be on August 19th. So save the date for that. We'll share more details soon. And then next Saturday, there will be a People's Block Party where we will celebrate the unity of our struggle and the victories we've seen so far through some of the campaigns I've mentioned. It'll be like in the afternoon, location TBD, but I'll share in the hopefully in the newsletter this week. And then following that, on Monday, we'll be headed to Seattle to the new Philippine consulate to raise the demands of our campaigns to the consulate. And I want to end my message with one of the calls of the United Church of Christ Philippines in their statement a year ago, right before the State of the Nation address. It says, "We call on all faith communities in the Philippines to deepen its engagement in social justice. We must move beyond a private, individualistic faith to a faith that is public and prophetic. We must be a church that stands with the oppressed, speaks for the voiceless, and works tirelessly for the coming of God's kingdom on earth, where justice and peace will prevail." This is the kind of faith I see modeled here at Park Rose, and I'm honored to practice it with you all. May we carry this encouragement with us as we carry on the legacy of Lyle and Kai in serving the people from Portland to the Philippines.